Help, I feel that my boyfriend may not love me. But if he doesn't love me, why did he agree to be with me in the first place? I was so impulsive that I actually started a post here. First of all, thank you all for your concern. In fact, it was originally a very simple thing. I just tend to mess up all simple things. To sum it up in one sentence, I want to come out to my parents and then take my boyfriend home to say hello to them. But my boyfriend is not willing. Actually, I can understand his reluctance. After all, same-sex marriage law has only been passed for less than a few years in our country. Although young people no longer regard homosexuality as a big deal, there are still many older people who can't accept same-sex couples. So precisely because of this, I proposed that I should talk to my parents first. I've imagined that if one day I go back and come out to my parents, their initial attitude will definitely be very tough, just like they've been to me for the past 20-odd years, strict and demanding, never giving compliments, and full of control. I've always known them well. There's a high probability that they will force me to break up with my boyfriend immediately. It's just a matter of getting used to it. I've thought that if my attitude is firm enough, they won't be able to do anything to me. They won't have the nerve to beat or scold me, nor will they bother to do the useless work of finding a psychologist to turn me straight. Moreover, they don't have much energy left to force me to go home immediately. Besides, I haven't been back to their home for many years. They will eventually accept it. They are not the kind of people who are unwilling to accept established facts. I'm not the only child in the family, so I'm not worthy of being their only hope in the palm of their hand. Moreover, I became financially independent many years ago. Except that I've just arrived in City T not long ago and, due to various reasons, I'm still living in a house they bought locally before. There's nothing else that restricts me to them. So, as long as I say hello in advance and then take my boyfriend to visit them later, at most they will say a few sarcastic remarks. I don't think they will have the temper to immediately kick us out of the house. But my boyfriend is not willing, and his reaction is very intense. My boyfriend and I were having dinner at that time. It was Valentine's Day. My boyfriend rarely didn't work overtime that day. When he told me I'll come back early on Valentine's Day evening, I was really extremely happy because actually I had booked a very hard-to-book Western restaurant for that Valentine's Day evening a long time ago. I just never told him because he's really very busy with work on weekdays and often works overtime. He has to be busy with business and always accompany people for social activities. Anyway, I'm a man, not like those young and beautiful girls. Acting coquettishly and making a fuss to ask their boyfriends to put aside their important work just to spend a festival together only makes them look cute. I previously thought there was probably a 60% to 70% chance that he would be busy on that day. So I just made the restaurant reservation and didn't tell him about it. Therefore, when he suddenly said this to me, I clearly felt my heart skip a beat and then it started pounding wildly. At that time, I pretended to be extremely calm. I buried my head in the book and replied to him, okay, then I'll make a reservation at a restaurant. He seemed to pause for a moment and asked me, now? Isn't it too late now? I didn't even dare to lift my head at that time. After holding it in for a long time, I said, it's okay, I guess. Although I didn't mention it, I actually hoped very much that he could come back early that day to celebrate the festival with me. I don't want any elaborately prepared gifts, nor do I need to go to a very luxurious restaurant. I don't need to travel anywhere, and I don't expect any unexpected surprises. I just want to celebrate a festival with him. After all, this is the first Valentine's Day we've spent together. To be honest, I'm not afraid of you laughing at me. Actually, the day after I knew he could go with me that day, I called the restaurant and made an agreement. When it came to the dessert course, don't serve 2 servings, just serve a 6-inch cheesecake directly. Because on my boyfriend's birthday before, he was working overtime. On my birthday this year, I went to another province for a lecture due to a business trip and exchange. So I thought that I might as well make up for a cake during this rare Valentine's Day when we're together, and then we can make a wish and eat it together. I'm never a romantic person. This is probably the most romantic thing I can imagine after racking my brains. Later, I realized that, just as my friend said, I'm already an adult but still don't know how to read people's expressions. I made the reservation at the restaurant on my own initiative, created romance arrogantly, and thought the atmosphere was great, but in fact, he wasn't very happy at that time, was he? Actually, I've never really known how to make him happy. I have no way and don't know how to fathom his mood. I often feel like a gambler at the gambling table with almost no chips left, carefully and nervously peeping at the croupier's face. I won't know the outcome of this bet until the cards are revealed. The gambler has staked everything, and the only thing she wants is the croupier's smile. I'm getting a bit off topic. Later, I thought the atmosphere was great at that time. On a whim, I suddenly asked him how he thought about our current relationship. Just a second before, he was idly poking at the steak with a silver knife. Now that I think about it, that restaurant probably didn't suit his taste. He just didn't say it to save my face. And I was just indulging in my own happiness and self-pity. I'm really a failure. But when he heard this, he suddenly looked up at me. To tell the truth, I already realized that the question was rather strange and felt a bit embarrassed. Just as I was about to change the topic, he smiled at me and said, "What do you think?" I was speechless for a moment. Actually, my boyfriend wasn't a person who often smiled when he was at school. After graduation, he started a company with his friends. But because he was really too young and afraid that he couldn't hold his own among some employees much older than him, he wore suits and leather shoes and fine, framed glasses every day, which made him look even more serious. People who don't often smile are really charming when they do. I didn't even have time to figure out what his smile meant. Then I got carried away and said to him that I wanted to introduce him to my parents when I went home next month. Well, maybe I asked if he wanted to meet my parents. I can't remember clearly, because the next second his face changed and he refused me very vehemently. Probably because the environment in the Western restaurant was really too quiet and the sound of his "no, I won't go" was just a little bit louder. At that time, many guests at other tables also looked towards us. It was so embarrassing. I held it in for a long time and actually blurted out stupidly why. He didn't answer. He just walked away. Then I sat there like a fool at the table for two. The restaurant waiter hesitated for a while before carefully coming over to ask if I still wanted the cake. Probably because they thought my pathetic look of being dumped by my dating partner on Valentine's Day was really pitiful. Of course, I had to say forget it at that time. Then I lingered in my seat and finished the remaining Italian baked pasta. I thought I'd wait until he got home before leaving so as to stagger the time for washing and going to bed and avoid embarrassment. But when I went to pay the bill, I found that my boyfriend had already settled it. He's really considerate. It's just that I lingered in the restaurant for at least an hour. When I went out, I found that my boyfriend was still waiting outside. It's still very cold in February in T-City. He didn't wear a scarf. The way he unconsciously shrank his neck in his hard, textured windbreaker actually looked a bit cute. When I saw him, he was concentrating on playing with his phone without unlocking the screen. He was just holding the phone and playing. He was standing under the street lamp with a cigarette in his mouth. He was very conspicuous. Then when he saw me come out, he didn't say hello. He just turned around and walked towards the parking lot. I had to trot to catch up with him. But when I got behind him, I didn't know what to say. So I just tried to guess from the back of his head whether he was still angry. He probably noticed my gaze. Suddenly, he took out the cigarette, turned his head and said coldly that he wasn't smoking, just holding it in his mouth. I went, "Huh," and nodded like a fool. He clicked his tongue and didn't say anything else. We just went home in silence all the way. My mind is a bit in a mess now. I'm just writing whatever comes to mind. It's clearly such a simple thing, but I've rambled on and written so much. Looking back, it's really a bit incoherent and illogical. I'm really sorry for making it hard for everyone to understand. There are actually people paying attention to this post. I was really feeling down during that time. However, these trivial matters, which even I felt were overly sensitive and delicate, I didn't know who to talk to. Starting this thread was just me finding a vent, like opening up to a confessional. Since someone is paying attention, I'll take the time to explain the few issues mentioned above. Some friends asked that since we're getting along well now, why am I so eager to introduce him to my parents? Actually, it's mainly because I'm about the right age now, and my family is urging me so much that they've already started making arrangements to set me up on blind dates. I wasn't sure about my sexual orientation for a long time. Maybe I'm born gay? I don't know. Actually, it's not that I've never liked girls. It's just that I never considered dating before I met my current boyfriend. Even if I try to look back on the time before college now, I don't think I was close to anyone, whether they were boys or girls. Most of the time, it was just polite inquiries or nodding greetings from a distance of 3 steps away. I just didn't really care at that time. However, I think that since my relationship with my boyfriend has become a bit more stable now, coming out to my family is, firstly, because I want to solve the problem once and for all and explain it clearly to my parents. In this way, my parents won't have to waste unnecessary time and energy arranging blind dates for me in the future, and they won't delay the time of those girls either. Secondly, it's because my parents, due to various reasons, they have relatively strong personalities and have a strong sense of protectiveness towards me. And they have accumulated some resources in their industry over the years. Coincidentally, my boyfriend is in the same industry as them. From childhood to adulthood, my parents have done many things, from secretly reading my diary to deciding my extracurricular activities, from changing my high school liberal arts or science major choices to trying to decide my university and major. They have a long list of such actions. If I hadn't fought back hard on the last issue, maybe they would have even decided my future internship projects, which company I would go to, and what position I would hold. Although I had one successful experience of resistance, I'm still worried that if I keep not telling them, not having a girlfriend, and not going on blind dates, according to our style of not really caring whether others know about our relationship outside, sometimes I go to my boyfriend's company to pick him up after work, and sometimes I bring him lunch at noon. People around my boyfriend and me all know about our relationship. Their industry is different from mine. Rumors spread very quickly there. If my parents find out about our relationship one day, based on my understanding of them, my boyfriend's job and even his company may be affected to some extent. So I think it's better for me to tell them in advance. Some friends also replied that it's hard to book a seat outside on Valentine's Day. It's better to order takeout at home. Actually, I've ordered takeout from nearby places several times and the food is very oily and salty. My boyfriend and I are both from the South and we're not used to it. Moreover, eating takeout often is not good for our health. Also, when I was a child, because my parents were very busy with work, actually, they still are, and they didn't like having strangers at home, I learned to cook by myself at a very young age. Although most of the dishes I can cook are just ordinary Chinese home-cooked meals, they are barely edible. But I remember that my boyfriend lived abroad for a long time. I thought he probably wouldn't be used to eating Chinese food. So I booked a restaurant outside. Now it seems that he doesn't really like Western food either. Or maybe that Western restaurant doesn't suit his taste. I feel really frustrated when I think about it. We've been dating for several years, but I don't even know what my boyfriend likes to eat. Some friends also asked about the cigarette issue. This is because my boyfriend was under a lot of work pressure for a while before and smoked very heavily. I was worried about his health, so I talked to him about it. Later, I don't know when. Maybe it was from that time on. When I belatedly realized it, he had already quit smoking. But at that time, when he told me that he was just holding the cigarette without lighting it, I didn't understand what he meant. I just nodded like a fool. Actually, I once narcissistically fantasized that maybe he quit smoking because of my words. But fantasies are just fantasies. Narcissism should have a limit. He is such a self-disciplined person. He probably quit smoking because he realized that smoking is harmful to health. It may not have anything to do with me. If I were to seriously ask him about it, it would seem that I think too highly of myself and both of us would be embarrassed. He is really not the kind of person who would change because of an insignificant remark from others. I've seen many people say that my boyfriend may not be as indifferent to me as I described. Thank you so much. You probably can't imagine how happy I was when I saw your comforting messages. But there was also a bit of sadness in that happiness. I can't help feeling sad. Actually, I used to regret my impulsive act of starting this post here. But now I've figured it out. I plan to regard this place as a secret, keeping place in the future, just like writing a diary, recording the trivial matters and moods when I get along with my boyfriend. I've always referred to him as my boyfriend. But actually our way of getting along is not as intimate and harmonious as that of many lovers around us. In this post from now on, I'd better call him Lucas because my social circle in real life is very small. For the few friends I've accidentally made, I can't force them to listen to these gossips and messy emotional experiences without a clear point. Instead, it's better to vent my feelings here in the future. And it's probably also related to my occupation. When I'm writing, my emotions will gradually calm down. Someone replied, saying that they thought I was being overly sentimental. Just because of such a trivial matter, I concluded that my boyfriend, Lucas, didn't love me. I went back and read my post. I couldn't even finish half of it. I really couldn't refute the argument of being sentimental. But I didn't come to such a conclusion just because of this one thing. This is not an accident. The sample size is large enough. It's just that I did post because of this incident, which has misled many of you. I'm really sorry. Actually, I realized it a long time ago, but I was just too weak to face it. Lucas is my junior, 4 years younger than me. At that time, I was still a graduate student doing research projects with my professional tutor. My major was rather niche and it was a liberal arts major, so the school didn't provide a special seminar room for our major except the library. So the tutor had to take a few of us students to borrow classrooms from other majors every day. In my first year of graduate school, the laboratory next to the classroom we borrowed was run by a teacher from another college who was familiar with our tutor. For a while, this teacher would bring 5 or 6 undergraduate competition students to do experiments and write reports all day. Since the tutors had a good relationship, we students also had more interactions. Lucas was one of those 5 or 6 undergraduates at that time. It was me who confessed my love to Lucas first. At that time, I didn't even figure out whether Lucas was straight or not. I just made a confession that was unreasonable, reckless, and now seems to have had no basic signs at all. It's really embarrassing. And the most embarrassing thing was that when I got excited and confessed my love to him regardless of anything, all the students from the 2 classrooms were around. Fortunately, because of this, Lucas took my feelings into account and didn't reject me on the spot. He just stood there silently. After I finished speaking, I just stood there stupidly, and he also stood there silently. I don't know how long the embarrassing atmosphere at the scene lasted. It was a friend I used to get along well with who probably couldn't bear it anymore, playfully put his arm around Lucas' shoulder to smooth things over and said that I was stubborn and had lost a truth or dare game and had to do whatever was told. He told Lucas not to take it too seriously. The others also burst into laughter. Some changed the topic, some called their friends to tease the teacher, and some pulled the stiff me away and loudly joked that I love to play jokes. People who have known me for a long time know that I never joke around. It wasn't until that moment that I realized how foolish I had been. He was a straight guy, and there had been rumors about him physically assaulting and sexually harassing his male mentor. Later, I heard that he was homophobic, finding it deeply offensive when others linked him to men in a suggestive manner. He was gifted, a prodigy, never compromising. And no one had ever dared to put him in an embarrassing situation. I fled in a hurry. I was in a daze at that time and didn't know where to run. Even now when I think about it, my face still burns with shame. I wish I could slap myself. Compared with pain, I feel more ashamed. It's hard for me to tell you what I said to him at that time. Considering Freud's psychological defense mechanism called repression when people encounter unacceptable things, I think I've forgotten. But if you ask me to imagine for a straight man who has had the experience of being harassed by the same sex, being told in public by a postgraduate student that he has dirty thoughts about him, and being forced to face a threatening confession of love in front of many people they both know, it's almost the same as forcing him to make a statement. He didn't do anything wrong, but because of my recklessness and rudeness, he got into such a good university with a bright future. But from now on, he'll surely be gossiped about. At that time, I not only had no face to see him, but also had no face to see those mutual friends present. I hid like a coward in the house my parents bought locally before. I didn't go to class or return to the dormitory. I just wished I could go back in time and beat myself up a few hours ago. Later, I don't know how long it took, probably a little over a week. Somehow, Lucas managed to find my place and found me decadent and unkempt. I still remember the way he looked down at me. He said, "You're good at hiding." I kept silent. "Aren't you someone who never jokes?" he sneered. I was speechless. "So you regret it, right?" I couldn't say a word at that time and could only shake my head desperately. Lucas fell silent. I couldn't help but look at him. His face seemed a little better than when he first entered the room. Maybe it was because he realized that I, the culprit, looked even more embarrassed and miserable, which made him feel a bit relieved. Things should have ended here. All I needed to do next was to tell him that everything before was just me being out of my mind, or simply follow what my friend said and say it was a prank for losing a game. As long as I sincerely apologized to him, explained the situation, and took the responsibility of clarifying things to other classmates. Let him scold me or beat me up to vent his anger, then the series of effects caused by my hasty and messed up confession could end quickly, and maybe Lucas and I could still get along as before. But I said nothing. My reason told me that I should end it all like this, but my heart betrayed my reason. No, I did say something. I said, "Don't you want to be with me?" My heart kept urging me to tell him that I'll treat you well. I've liked you for a long time. I liked you at first sight. You're someone I can never be. I often lower my head when I meet you. I dare not look at you too much because I'm afraid my eyes will be burned by you. I don't need to look at you to see you. You are the person I can clearly see from the corner of my eye without even raising my head. But just that one sentence seemed to have exhausted all my courage. I really couldn't bring myself to say anything else to him that might make him feel even more disgusted. I tried my best. Lucas was probably scared by me at that time. Well, it's understandable. Seeing a slovenly man making a confession and looking all twisted on the verge of crying in front of you, anyone would be scared. But he still agreed. It's really amazing. I was just so dizzy at that time that I don't quite remember how he agreed. It's better this way. If I remembered that he agreed with a twisted expression out of impatience and helplessness, I would probably feel even more pain. So, even though I've been grateful for every accidental part of that moment up to now, who can say that Lucas didn't agree to be with me out of some kind of sympathy or just wanting to quickly end this farce? However, even if this relationship was begged for by me, I took advantage of Lucas' kindness, his respect for his seniors, and the pressure of public opinion. It was only after I begged him again and again in a pathetic way, crying like a crazy man about to hang himself, that he reluctantly agreed to me. But I still feel lucky. I've never been a very proactive person who would go after something. In my life, there are only two things, people, or rather, events that I've proactively pursued. One was when I was admitted to university. For the first time, I defied my parents' wishes and chose a major that was far from home and completely unrelated to what they hoped I would choose. Although a lot of things happened at that time. In the end, I still did what I initially wanted to do and studied the major that I was really interested in. The other one is Lucas. I fell in love with Lucas at first sight. He picked up the novel that I dropped on the ground but didn't bend down to pick up because I was looking at him. When he handed the book to me, I looked into his eyes and felt like I had fallen into them. From then on, there has always been a sense of panic in my heart. I'm afraid that I will lose him. But in fact, I've never really had him. I originally planned to get along well with Lucas, but it seems I've messed things up again. After the restaurant incident, I've never dared to mention the matter of introducing Lucas to my parents again. Lucas also seems to be deliberately avoiding the embarrassment of that day. We just continue to live in peace as if nothing had happened. Just like every previous conflict between us. But it seems I've made Lucas angry again today. It started like this. Lucas' company seems to have taken on a big order recently and there are a lot of things to deal with. He has to socialize outside for more than half of the nights in a week and often works so late that he has to stay overnight in the company. I'm worried that he won't be able to bear the workload. But I can't say anything like persuading him not to work so hard. He is different from me. I have no great ambitions and just deal with some obscure documents that no one wants to read all day long. He always knows what he wants. Lucas switched to business major in college and then started to intern in various companies. After graduating from undergraduate, he founded a company with his friends and it seems to be preparing for listing recently. This order is very important to him. I really can't help much. I can only go to Lucas' company to deliver meals to him a few times. And if Lucas comes back after socializing at night, I'll heat a cup of milk for him. I should have known that even if I didn't plan to inherit my parents' business at that time, I should have learned about it and picked up a little bit. Otherwise, I wouldn't be just sitting here watching the person I like being extremely anxious about work and can only do some cooking and nothing else. Fortunately, probably because the work is progressing smoothly, Lucas has been in a good mood recently. When I often go to his company to deliver meals, I can always see him smiling. Although Lucas actually doesn't like drinking milk very much, this is probably one of the few things I know about Lucas. But he is always sensitive. If I give him tea or coffee late at night, he probably won't be able to sleep tonight. And Lucas is allergic to soy products, so only milk can help him sleep and is nutritious. The most important thing is that Lucas has a weak stomach and often eats takeaways in the company. He can't eat much of the heavy oil and heavy salt food. I just want him to drink more milk. I'm trying to see if I can nourish his stomach, but he drinks it every time I give it to him. So recently, the happiest moment of my day is to open a book, pretend to be reading, and secretly glance at Lucas frowning, wearing a cashmere pajamas, holding a computer and drinking milk. I've digressed again. I'm really sorry. I've always been told that I have a kind of chatty personality, like seemingly silent but actually talkative when not very familiar. I know this is annoying, but I just can't change it for the time being. But I'll restrain myself a bit in front of Lucas. I don't know why, but as soon as I see him, I seem to become someone different from myself. It was like this before I confessed my feelings. I wanted to tell him not to look at me, but also wanted to ask why he didn't look at me. I used to be self-satisfied at times, but in front of him, I've never been dazzling or confident. I dare not speak loudly. I seem to be full of flaws, small and hunched. I don't know where to put my hands. My mouth is dry and I dare not speak. I want him to notice me, but I'm also afraid that he will. At that time, I often thought that probably even the most love-struck girl wouldn't be more paranoid about gains and losses than me. Whenever I think of him, my heart feels as if it's being wrung tight and I can't stop trembling. What on earth am I talking about? Sick people are really too prone to being overly emotional. Yes, even though Lucas is so busy, he's fine. Yet I, a idle person who just reads books, writes articles, and cooks every day, actually got sick. At first, it was just sneezing and coughing a couple of times. It had absolutely no impact on my daily life. Lucas has been so busy with work recently, so I really didn't have the heart to bother him about such a trivial matter. Coincidentally, he stays at the company during the day and often has to work overtime at night. It seems that he's afraid of disturbing me. I really don't know why he has to work so hard. In fact, he's already doing very well. He usually sleeps in the guest room, so maybe he didn't hear me coughing and sneezing in the middle of the night. Anyway, he didn't know that I was sick. Here I'd like to remind everyone that when you're sick, you should take medicine and see a doctor immediately. Otherwise, a minor illness will turn into a serious one. I'm a living example of self-sabotage. Yesterday, my friend called me early in the morning asking me to help out in an emergency. There was a manuscript the Research Institute had promised to a magazine, but the theme clashed with another one. So they asked if I had the time to revise an old article and submit it. I was suddenly assigned this task while still in bed early in the morning. I wrapped myself in a blanket and wrote for a whole day. After sending it just in time, I fell asleep right away. Then I forgot to take my medicine. As a result, when I was woken up by the phone ringing this morning, I felt dizzy and disoriented. I had no idea what day it was. When answering the phone, I listened to the other person talk for a long time. Actually, I just grunted a few times. I didn't even recognize who the other person was. Then the other person asked if I was sick and if I had taken my medicine. I should have replied at that time, yes, I have. The other person then asked me when I took it. I said the day before yesterday. Later, the other person probably asked something like, "Are you still living in the same house?" I don't even remember if I responded at that time, and I hardly remember when I hung up the phone. As a result, when I was pulled out of the quilt and gradually regained consciousness looking at the blue and green medicine and the steaming porridge on the bedside table, I noticed a friend sitting on a chair with his feet propped up on my bed, playing on his computer. He's one of my few friends whose vulgar comment about me I quoted earlier. I didn't tell him I was sick before. I can just imagine him standing beside my bed, admiringly applauding for me after learning about Lucas' recent work status and comparing it with mine. Yes, he knows Lucas. I probably mentioned him before. He's the friend who first came to my rescue at the embarrassing confession scene between me and Lucas. After I blankly called his name, this friend who broke into my house without my permission used my computer and looked impatient, severely criticized the manuscript that I, being sick, still helped him out with. He only told me about it 15 or 16 hours before the deadline, and I worked on it for a whole day and sent it to him for review before going to bed. He mercilessly criticized my perfunctory attitude towards the task he assigned me. I heard that it was because there were several obvious mistakes in the manuscript I wrote in a daze when I was sick, and even the format of the references was incorrect. He originally called to scold me. But then he found that my voice sounded a bit strange, so he came and threatened to send an email to our graduate school teacher to report my idleness and lack of progress. I think to make it easier for you to understand the following text, I have to state one thing, that is, this friend of mine used to be my boyfriend for a while. Although he is called an ex-boyfriend, strictly speaking, he was only a nominal one. It was more like a mutual joke than a real relationship. From beginning to end, it was a completely spiritual connection, a pure platonic relationship. We didn't even hold hands, let alone kiss. It was quite common for us to stay up all night looking for materials in the library or doing research in the classroom until midnight and then sleeping in the same bed. You don't have to wonder what we could do in a pile of books where the value of the rare books was so high that even if we were sold together, we couldn't afford 1/10 of them. I think I mentioned before that no one was close to me before I went to college, and this friend was the first one. He was quite different from me. Although his family background was somewhat similar to mine, but most of the time he didn't seem like the kind of academic person you usually talk about. He was cheerful, talkative, good at socializing, liked to dress up, and was almost naughty when it came to joking. Most of the time, I didn't mind. He wasn't a bad person. He often pulled me out of the dormitory or the library and took me to all kinds of school social activities, saying that it was to prevent me from getting moldy. Since then, I don't know if it was because of him he was always the center of attention in the crowd, but gradually people started to strike up conversations with me and chat with me. I also began to receive strange letters frequently. Naturally, I didn't reply. Then, I don't know how much time passed. One day, when we were organizing documents in the tutor's office, this friend suddenly said to me without even looking up, "Do you know that many people say we're together?" I didn't know, so I just silently looked at him. He looked up at me, raised his eyebrows, indicating that he wanted me to show some reaction. I had to say, do you mind? Mind what? This baseless rumor. He seemed to smile. Vaguely, I thought he was angry. I don't mind, he said sincerely as he divided the stack of documents into two halves and pushed half of them towards me. Anyway, I don't plan to fall in love. Although I'm not afraid of rejecting others, it's better to avoid unnecessary trouble. Naturally, I was happy to use each other as a shield. This superficial relationship lasted until the first time I saw Lucas. I threatened him with his unsaved thesis and asked him to immediately clarify that our relationship was no more than friendship in front of others. At first, he said he dumped me but only changed his story to a peaceful breakup after he knew I had a crush on Lucas. I've digressed again. You'll just have to bear with it. Anyway, the result was that I was sitting on the bed taking medicine while being scolded by him. I'll still call him my friend since he can't really be called an ex-boyfriend. And then Lucas came back. I've never seen him come back at this time. It's really bad. Of course, at that time, the distance between my friend and me was at least 1 meter. There was no physical contact at all and no ambiguous atmosphere. I didn't think I had done anything sorry to Lucas. But at that time, my mind was probably short-circuited by the fever. It's no exaggeration to say that I was stunned and I just seemed very guilty and not open-hearted. When Lucas first came back, it seemed that his expression was barely good-tempered, but his face changed when he saw my friend. Well, actually, although Lucas probably knew my friend earlier than he knew me over the years, I vaguely felt he doesn't seem to like my friend very much. Maybe it's because their personalities are very different and they are both the focus of the crowd. The degree to which they can't stand each other is even slightly felt by someone as dull as me. He didn't look at me, but coldly questioned my friend why he was here. My friend was unhurried. He pushed his gold-rimmed glasses and asked Lucas why he was here. At that time, I really felt like my hair was standing on end. Although I didn't tell him explicitly, I always thought we both defaulted that Lucas was dating me. So I hurriedly said beside them, he's my boyfriend. My friend just gave a non-committal, oh. What's he pretending to be stupid for at this moment? He probably ignored my incredulous look. He tilted his head slowly and asked Lucas, then why don't you even know he's sick? I watched helplessly as Lucas was about to slightly raise his lips, but his face suddenly turned pale at the words. For 3 or 4 days? He even turned to ask me. He wasn't really asking me. I was simply too lazy to care about him. I turned to Lucas and said, just a little cough. I've been too busy with work recently, so I didn't tell you. I was explaining, but Lucas didn't look any better. My friend, as if it wasn't enough, added fuel to the fire. He wrapped the blanket that he had snatched from me to cover my knees before Lucas came back around my neck. He didn't intend to return it to me at all before. He smiled and said to me, this medicine should be taken 1 tablet every few hours and this one can't be taken before meals. Then he got up, put on his coat, patted Lucas on the shoulder and said the porridge was a bit cold and asked him to heat it up. Then he left with a pat on his butt. Neurotic. Then I was like a fool, wrapped in a huge blanket looking at Lucas face to face. Lucas gave me a deep look, picked up the porridge and turned to go out. With a bang of the door, the whole house fell into complete silence in an instant. At that time, my mind seemed a bit cold after sudden heat. I was so dazed that I even seemed to smile for a moment. It seems he's not going to heat the porridge. I silently got into the quilt and thought to amuse myself in the midst of hardship. The microwave oven is in the kitchen. At that time, I thought Lucas would be like before. After I did something stupid or sometimes didn't even realize what I had done to make him unhappy, he would hide in the company for a few days. Then when he showed up in front of me again, it would be as if nothing had happened. He would never mention this matter again. But this time Lucas came back soon. He even brought a big bag of medicine and several boxes of porridge. It seems that the box brought by the friend before is not there. I shrank in the quilt and secretly watched him. He rummaged through the medicine brought by the friend for me, made a tisk sound. Probably considering that I was a patient, his hand on me through the quilt was very gentle and his voice was also very soft. Take a look. Is there any medicine here that you've taken before? I answered and got up to look. He untied the blanket around my neck and casually threw it on the ground. He was really gentle at that time. He helped me pour out all the medicine from the boxes and pick them out from the tinfoil shells. When he fed me warm water, he tasted the temperature first. So at that time, I thought he wasn't angry. But when I heated milk for him at night, he told me not to heat it anymore in the future. At first, I was so self-opinionated that I thought it was because I was sick and he wanted me to have a good rest. But now that I'm well, he still doesn't drink it. Right? I only know to stupidly bring milk late at night all day long, trying to please the other person even when the other person doesn't like it. It's really too stupid. But Lucas also told me that I don't need to go to his company to deliver meals for him in the future. He said he could eat outside. Sure enough, he's still angry. I'm considering whether I should let him go. Lucas hasn't been home for several days. I don't dare to deliver meals to him either for fear that he is already busy enough and still has to deal with me. But I always leave the living room light on before going to bed every night, thinking what if? What if he rushes around for work until midnight and comes back at night? He will know that there will be a place in the city leaving a light on for him. But every time I walk out of the room the next morning, the cold sunlight shines into the living room and the light is still on. I simply don't know what we're doing. When I was with him at the beginning, I wasn't unaware that it might have a negative impact on his life. But I also naively thought it didn't matter. I would compensate him in other aspects. I would be very good to him. Even if I couldn't give him a child, I could still give him a home. After graduation, we came to the current city to settle down together. You know that while the economy of City T is developed, the housing price for newly graduated students. Well, Lucas told me not to worry. But even if he said nothing, even if I'm careless and not sensitive to money, I still know that for him who just founded a company with his friends, where could he get so much money all at once? So I proposed to him at that time that my parents had bought a property locally in the early years. Although it wasn't very big, it should be okay for us to stay there for a few years. I was very happy at that time because I thought I finally helped him. Although this house belonged to my parents and I was just borrowing something to present as a gift. I was also happy because we had a home in a strange city. Now that I think about it, he probably never regarded this place as his home. My major is completely different from his. Seeing how hard he works on weekdays, I thought about taking him to meet my parents first to confirm our relationship and then secretly asking them if they could help Lucas with his company. But Lucas was simply unwilling to go with me to meet my parents. I've thought about taking care of his daily life, but even now I don't quite know what he likes to eat. During the few times we had meals at home, I tried to change the ingredients and cook different dishes each time to see what he liked so that I could cook more of them in the future. But he seemed to eat everything about the same. I took lunch to his company at noon and the lunch boxes were all empty when I came back at night. Maybe he dumped the things he didn't like in the end. Sometimes when I make a restaurant reservation with him and ask him what he wants to eat, he always says it's up to me. But he never seems to be very interested when we eat out. I even don't know what he is working and overtime so desperately for. I've asked him, but he doesn't answer. He probably thinks it's useless to say it and that I won't understand anyway. Maybe he really has something he likes to eat. It's just that I'm so oblivious. I put him in my heart and want to look at him carefully. But when I look at him, I always feel as if there is a layer of fog in front of my eyes. I can't see his joys, sorrows, likes and dislikes. I don't know the pressure he is under and his ideals. I think I should let him go. I broke up with Lucas today. It sounds tough when I say it, but actually I just took advantage of the fact that he came home early today and was in a good mood and asked him if we should separate for a while. I'm afraid that if I mention it to him when he's in a bad mood, he'll just straightforwardly reply to me, then why not just break up? He was stunned for a moment, put down his chopsticks, looked at me and asked why. I can't tell him that I don't understand you, I don't comprehend you, and I can only bring you endless troubles but can't help you at all. It sounds like a coquettish way of playing hard to get and waiting for the other person to comfort me by retreating in order to advance. This is not my intention. So I could only say, I think you've been too busy with work recently. I don't want to bother you. We can separate for a while. Then you can focus more on what you want to do. When you're done, if you want to, we can. Before I could finish this long, winded and jumbled speech, he impatiently interrupted me. Liar. I was speechless. You never lied before. Great, I can be even worse in front of him before the breakup. Why? He seemed really impatient, tapping on the table corner and looking at me. What does my busy work have to do with you? My work doesn't come from you. Separating from you won't change my workload at all. You haven't come to the company to see me recently. Your presence won't have any impact on my concentration. I really should applaud his ability to find the logic from a mess and his empirical spirit. Why? He asked again. He looked into my eyes. I couldn't avoid his gaze. I couldn't lie under such a gaze, and I've never been good at lying. So I told the truth. I think I'm not good enough for you. He was stunned for a moment and then suddenly laughed. He stood up, clapped his hands, left a sentence, "It's good that you know," and walked upstairs without finishing his meal. First, I'd like to apologize to my friends who care about me and ask about the follow-up because I don't know how to write the follow-up either. Just like every previous conflict between us, as I've said, there is no follow-up. It seems that nothing has changed between us. Lucas acts as if he never had that conversation with me a few days ago. He continues to work overtime and come home late as usual. However, the project of his company seems to be approaching the end, so he has been coming back to sleep at home recently, although very late. I had a dream last night. I dreamed about the days after we first met and before I confessed my love to him. Looking back now, those days were really relaxing and peaceful. We did our favorite things in classrooms separated by a wall. We discussed the books we had recently read and our majors. Occasionally, we participated in school activities together and sent each other messages intermittently. He never called me senior, as if we were peers and friends before I had inappropriate thoughts. We were like all the gentlemen in the world who hit it off immediately and had a quiet and unassuming relationship. I don't know when things started to change. I'm almost certain that my initial feelings for him were probably admiration mixed with envy. However, I still don't quite understand how this admiration started to change. I like him, but I'm not sure if I really like him or how much I like him. My mind is full of thoughts about whether he is straight, whether he has a lover, whether he will like me, how he sees me, what he thinks of me, whether he will, whether he can also like me. Actually, it seems quite tiring to say so. Once a person falls in love, it seems that there is never a time when they don't feel tired. I haven't been here for a long time. We haven't broken up and we probably won't break up. Now I think the phrase, "you can't get a word out of him with 8 blows of a club," should be used to describe Lucas. My tone of reply this time may not be very good. I'm sorry because I thought of something. The night before last, Lucas was out socializing until midnight as usual. I waited until 12:30 and thought he probably wouldn't come back tonight, so I got into bed and went to sleep early. I was woken up by the phone ringing in the middle of the night. When I answered it, it was a strange man's voice. "Hello, may I ask if you are Mr. Oliver?" I just grunted in response. "Lucas has drunk too much. I'm downstairs in your community now. Can you come down and take over?" At that time, I glanced at the phone's note and found that the caller ID was Lucas. At this moment, my mind finally became a little clearer. I remembered that this voice was actually not strange. It should be the friend who co-founded the company with Lucas. I had met him several times when I went to Lucas's company to deliver meals to him. I'll mark him as Michael later. I hurriedly put on my coat and ran downstairs in the community. From afar, I saw Michael rubbing his hands beside a Land Rover with its lights on, standing near the exit of the temporary parking lot in the community. When he saw me, he looked as if he had seen a savior. He waved his hands and greeted me excitedly. My face was a bit numb from sleeping. I just nodded to him as a sign and didn't exchange too many greetings. Michael originally planned to hand Lucas over to me downstairs in my house and then leave. But when he saw Lucas in a completely unconscious state, he volunteered to help me take Lucas into the room. "You don't know how bad Lucas' mood has been recently," Michael complained to me while we were helping Lucas upstairs together. "He's been working insanely hard recently." "No, he's always been this hard working. What on earth is he striving for?" I originally thought that after the company went public, I could barely be considered a young talent. I even planned to quickly find a girl and start a relationship. But before I even saw a shadow of my first girlfriend, XX just threw a new order at me. He has a family, but I don't. And look at him. He's always eager to go home every day, but still has to be busy with socializing and drinking. I mean, what's the point of giving up enjoyment for the sake of work? I was getting a headache from his long-winded speech. When he asked me if there were any girls I could introduce, I quickly changed the topic. "Did Lucas ask you to call me?" "No, he was completely drunk tonight. I wanted to open a hotel room for him, but he refused and just kept shouting to go home. When I asked where his home was, he wouldn't say. I had to check the company's employee address list," Michael replied. "Lucas looks quite thin, but he's really not light." "Yes, because he's half a head taller than you," I thought to myself. I couldn't carry him alone when we got downstairs, so I rummaged through his phone to find the emergency contact. I saw the note home on it at that time. But when I called, it didn't seem to be a landline. "Are you very busy recently?" When we got to the door, Michael asked me. "It's okay. Then won't you really consider coming to our company more often? Our company has a rest area for family members and the facilities are very user-friendly." I was silent for a moment and said to Michael that I thought Lucas probably didn't want me to go there and bother him. "How is that possible?" Michael widened his eyes. "I thought he was waiting for you every mealtime?" After Michael left, I started to settle Lucas. The drowsiness I felt when I was woken up by the phone just now had flown away. I looked at Lucas's flushed face after getting drunk and thought about what Michael had said to me just now. I forgot what I was thinking at that time. I placed my hand on Lucas's forehead. Unexpectedly, at this time, Lucas, who had been in a drowsy and semi-unconscious state, suddenly raised his hand and grabbed the wrist of the hand I had placed on his forehead. While I was panicking and didn't know what to do, he struggled to open one eye. Seeing that it was me, his hand relaxed and then dropped casually. I can't let him fall asleep like this. Shall I go and cook some sobering soup for you? I said to him in a low voice. Don't sleep here. Get up and go back to the room to cover with a quilt. He opened his eyes and looked blankly at the ceiling. After a while, he closed his eyes again and said, I won't drink it. If you don't want to drink it, then don't. I also thought it might be a bit difficult for him to drink the hangover soup in this state. It would be better for him to just sleep first. Get up. You'll catch a cold if you sleep on the sofa. I want to drink milk. I was completely stunned at that moment. After a while, I slowly asked him in a very low voice, but don't you dislike drinking it? He said, yes, I don't like it. I fell silent. I want to have lunch. My hand on his forehead trembled slightly, then slowly moved down a bit and landed on his eyes. I was afraid that if I looked into his eyes, I wouldn't be able to say some things. Didn't you tell me not to see you off? He was silent for a long time. Just when I thought he had fallen asleep, he also whispered with a hint of grievance, I told you not to see me off, and you really didn't? Silence once again enveloped me. I said to him, I don't know what you want. I can only judge based on what you say. He didn't reply. By then, I had already lost a bit of the patience I had always been proud of. My hand on his eyes moved down a bit more and I pinched his nose. After dozens of seconds, he opened his mouth to gasp for air as if admitting defeat. You'll just do whatever I say? Tell me. Then I want you to come and bring me lunch every day. Okay. His company isn't far from home. Anyway, I have to cook every day. It's just a matter of cooking a little more. Don't let Leo come to our home. Sure. Leo is my friend. His visit last time was simply an accident. I think if I hadn't sounded like I was dying on the phone, he probably wouldn't have wanted to come. Don't get sick. I'll try my best. I really can't guarantee this. Don't eat out anymore in the future. What's this about? I want to eat at home, he added, the food you cook. Sure. Don't mention breaking up again. He still had his eyes closed. I suspected that he was sober, but I didn't verify it. I used my lowest possible voice as if talking to myself. I'm afraid I'll hold you back. He didn't say a word afterwards. He just quietly let me help him into the bedroom, take off his coat, lie on the bed, and cover him with the quilt. I left a small lamp for him. At the door, I said to him, I'll sleep in the guest room tonight. Just call out if you need anything. Just as I closed the door, a voice suddenly came from under his quilt. Is it really not me who's holding you back? I immediately opened the door again. Why would you say that? I asked him. Who told you that? If it weren't for me, you would have finished your doctoral degree, gone to the UK, and then returned to Province G2. I couldn't really hear clearly what he said later because he really fell asleep afterwards. I seemed to understand where the problem lies. I went home today. It wasn't the home I share with Lucas, but my parents' ancestral home. I should have thought of it earlier. I've said before that in some aspects, they have a long record of wrongdoings. I clearly knew that their feelings towards me were more of excessive possessiveness and control rather than care and love. They hoped that I would live the way they thought I should live. I made all the plans to introduce Lucas to them, but I never thought that they had already approached Lucas. The night before last, after Lucas got drunk and fell asleep, I booked a flight ticket overnight. The next morning, while Lucas was drinking the hangover tea, I told him that I had to go to a lecture in another city and would be back the next day. Lucas seemed a bit unhappy and murmured that he would have to skip lunch for these 2 days and that I should make it up to him later. I promised him. He's right. I've changed. I've learned to lie. At that moment, I didn't have time to be timid and sentimental. I felt like there was a fire in my heart. Now that I think about it, the word irritated is the most appropriate to describe my state of mind at that time. When I got home, a lady who looked to be in her early 40s was sitting on the main seat in the open-style tea room. The living room was filled with the sound of the videotape of the Peony Pavilion, and it was just singing the line, I want to leave but still linger. Looking at each other intently, how strange that we meet in such a good situation but are speechless. My mother brewed 2/3 of a cup of tea in the porcelain cup opposite her before she looked up at me standing in the entrance hall. She didn't seem surprised at all by my visit, which was a last-minute decision even for myself. This well-maintained lady stood up and said to me with a smile, the tea is still hot and you're back. I silently looked up at her. It wasn't because she was taller than me. When my parents had the house renovated, for some reason, they deliberately built a step about half a foot high at the junction of the entrance hall and the living room. So I remember that whenever someone came to visit our house when I was a child, they would always look up when greeting my parents while standing in the entrance hall. They would surely look up. But today, the visitor is me. I heard that you've written an article recently. She nodded at me reservedly and said with a smile, I heard that Leo helped you revise it, but Mom thinks you can watch the original play to learn more and avoid making similar mistakes in the future. Leo is my friend. The article, Analysis of the Ideology in by Xianyang's The Peony Pavilion, was a hasty and error-ridden commercial manuscript I wrote when I was ill. Remarkable. In silence, I stepped into the living room and vaguely recalled being tripped by these stairs a couple of times as a child. When my father was around, he would always stand by coldly scolding me for my rudeness and recklessness. I once asked my mother why our house had such stairs at the entrance, and she simply smiled and replied, that stair wasn't meant to trip you. Then who is it for? I asked her. Her smile seemed more genuine. Instead of answering directly, she told me that it was like the clang before a tune change in an opera, a reminder to the visitors that there was a threshold here. The actor in the video had already sung the line, I've exhausted my energy for nothing. Sitting or rising, I feel like I owe something. I just wait to go to sleep. My mother tilted her head as if indulging in it. I knew she wanted to wait until the last few segments were sung, so I held back and didn't make a sound. I'm not saying I've never seen this play before. In fact, my initial interest in Chinese opera came from my family. If I were to recall my childhood, the images of my father and mother were rather vague. Usually, it was teachers and tutors with various titles and faceless cooking aunts who came and went. If I were to say the most vivid and clear impression I can recall, it's actually these Chinese operas, mostly of the lingering and affectionate kind, that were constantly heard all year round. Among them, the Locked Brocade Pouch and the Peach Blossom Fan were played most often. My mother could sing a few lines, and so could I. It's just that she only regarded it as a pastime while I made it my career. Mom, as soon as the last line of the opera ended, I couldn't help but speak up. Have you met Lucas? She seemed to have just woken up from the opera. She turned her head and looked at me tolerantly, just like the way she looked at me when I asked her who is it meant to trip more than a decade ago. Did he tell you? No, by then I wasn't too annoyed anymore. I just felt a bit tired and helpless. I guessed. She returned to the tea table without calling me. She picked up the teacup with a green glazed exterior and white interior on the main table, took a sip, and then said slowly, he wants to get into this business, but he can't hide his thoughts at all. Even someone like you can notice. What do you think? What did she want to ask me what I thought about? It's such a familiar atmosphere. What did you say to him? She glanced at me a few times as if finding it very interesting. She casually played with the teacup and then touched the jade bracelet on her wrist that was the same color as the green glaze of the teacup. I talked about you. I really can't imagine how Lucas felt when he met and talked with her. My mother sighed. She called me by my pet name as if I were still a child. Your father and I are very worried about you. Are they worried that I can't become like them? So they were still worried. It seems that it's all my fault. I thought I had already disappointed them. You're nothing like us, she added. And you're so disobedient. I feel a headache coming on. To be honest, over the years I've often thought that my parents have not just been using this kind of gentle, seemingly harmonious and filial attitude of we're all doing this for your own good and I've given you everything and even presented the right options in front of you towards me for just one day. And when I try to avoid it, they'll just shake their heads helplessly, with an expression of you're really so naive to decide my decisions. After they told me that a diary is for recording the events and various thoughts of the day, they secretly read it every day. Before I was 12, they sent someone to escort me to and from school. And after I turned 12, they told me you've grown up. This is the first step towards your independence. Then they sent someone to follow me and record every word and deed on my way to and from school. They arranged good friends for me, investigated my interpersonal relationships outside of these good friends, decided on my school, whether I should study liberal arts or science, and even planned to choose my university and major for me. I don't know how I endured all this for the past 10-odd years. But after I became an adult, especially after I met Lucas, I feel that I can hardly bear it anymore. I can't remember anyone around me in the past 20 years who lived as firmly and reliably as him and who knew exactly what he wanted. You know, we have the ability to make you obedient. But since we're family, we don't want to make things too difficult for you, the lady in front of me said unhurriedly in a daze. The house you lived in when you were in college and the house you're living in now. Lucas is really something. He's such an adult. And he doesn't even have a house of his own. Lucas is only 24 years old. He's had a listed company just 2 years after graduating from college. He has a boundless future. He didn't buy a house because I asked him to live in the current one. He says he's going to start a company, but the company is so small. She seemed to see what I was about to say. She shook her head helplessly, then lowered her eyes and gently stirred the tea leaves on the rim of the cup. But he works very hard. That's naturally worthy of praise. It's just that he probably doesn't have much free time to accompany you on a normal day. I feel like I understand a bit more. So who should I thank for the fact that he has less time to accompany me? She sighed, put down the teacup, and casually mentioned a few names. I know that in that position over the years, she's never spoken casually. The girls she just mentioned are the same generation as me in their circle. I might have met a few of them before college. They were all so alike that I can hardly remember them. If it weren't for the fact that a few of them have appeared in the financial magazines that Lucas often reads in the guise of socialites in recent years, I probably wouldn't be able to remember them at all right now. Seeing that I remained unmoved, she didn't seem surprised. She then mentioned a few boys' names. Among them was actually my friend. If you really don't like girls, Mom can understand. She's really considerate of me. But why does it have to be him? I'm not saying that he's a bad person. It's just that you grew up in completely different environments. How can he understand you? How can you understand him? I stared at her expressionlessly. Leo is also a good choice, she continued. Leo is even in the same major as you. But now he has also opened a publishing house. What's the point of you staying at home all day waiting for someone who doesn't understand you and whom you don't understand either to come back? If my friend knew that my mom was trying to set me up with someone here, looking as if as long as I compromise and nod, she would immediately call his mom and tie him over, she would probably strangle me with a blanket. Mom. I interrupted her. She stopped talking, put down the teacup, and calmly looked at me. The calmness could hardly conceal her sternness. She used to not talk to me in such a gentle tone. She used to be very strict. Even now, no matter how gentle her smile is, her sternness is still hard to hide. The last time I saw this expression was when she asked me to transfer to University B to finish my doctorate. She had already arranged a teacher for me after I went to the UK, but I refused her. It was only in recent years that she started to cultivate her mind. I just know very well what kind of person she is. She is the same kind of person as my father. They seem reasonable and kind, but they are afraid that others really think they are reasonable and kind. Because I'm not like them no matter what I do or how well I do it, even when they are smiling, it's just the tolerance they show to outsiders when dealing with a disobedient child's willfulness. They take pride in making the right choices for me. Their visit to Lucas was a right choice. But they have one good point. From childhood to adulthood, as long as I ask a question, they will answer it. I know what they said to Lucas. You actually don't need to worry too much about me and Lucas. My parents are not crazy. They won't, like in the scripts, find someone to lock me up at home, immediately take back the accommodation and drive us onto the street, or ask someone to bring down Lucas' company. They have more than one child and more than one house. They know that driving us out will only make them look bad in front of their friends, the kind of friends they used to want to introduce to me. There's no use in doing so. After all, we can stay in a hotel. They also look down on a company that has only been listed for 2 years. Mom, I said to her, I've made a decision. She stared at me, but you've made the wrong decision again. Really? I stood up. I found the answers to the questions I wanted to ask on this trip. I think it's time for me to leave. At that time, there came a rustling sound from the wooden corridor on the second floor. I subconsciously turned my head to look and saw a girl walking down from there. She seemed a bit surprised when she saw me and simply called out elder brother. 10 years ago, I got a younger sister. This was probably a decision made by my parents after they had foreseen something, and it was also one of the reasons why they gradually let go of me readily. I can imagine the disappointment they've had in me over the years. This disappointment has probably turned into despair. They are qualified businessmen. They never waste time on unnecessary things. My younger sister has delicate eyebrows and bright eyes. Her eyes are very much like those of the woman behind me. I nodded to her as a greeting, then turned to my mother and said, in your eyes, I probably have never made a correct decision. She should applaud my self-awareness. After leaving home, I took a deep breath, took out my phone and dialed Lucas's number. I lied. I didn't go to give a lecture. I just went back home, I said before he could speak. I want to talk to you. I don't know if there's something wrong with my description of Lucas. Maybe it's because I posted several times earlier in a rather impulsive state, somewhat with the intention of finding an outlet to vent. So this also made my description of Lucas biased and not objective. But I think I'll never be able to describe him truly objectively to anyone. In fact, he's not a cold-hearted person. He talks little, never makes exaggerated expressions, doesn't make a fuss, and rarely appears in a hurry or flustered. This makes him always seem calm, reliable, and graceful. In fact, he's a very thoughtful person. Before I confessed my love and when we were still just friends, I was attracted by his steady and calm temperament. At that time, he was a competition student. Unlike ordinary students, he didn't have holidays or weekends. Other competition students could run to other departments 5 times during a 3-hour experiment. Only he could concentrate wholeheartedly and do the experiment for a full 8 hours without distraction. I originally thought he did it because he truly loved it. But later I found out that he had actually submitted an application to change his major. He just took responsibility for all his choices, gave a proper ending to what he once loved, and then walked towards his next choice without distraction. This made everything in his hands have a proper beginning and end. He likes to keep everything in his heart. He always quietly solves problems and achieves his goals without making a sound. He knows what he wants. He always acts more than he talks, observes, and restrains himself more than he makes rash attempts. This kind of temperament is actually very rare among people of the same age. Moreover, he is neither complacent nor gloomy. In my impression, he is really popular and always has the final say in any crowd. Perhaps the image of him in my heart is too deeply ingrained, so I thought he would always be steady and calm and would not be shaken by any meaningless things. I thought he would always know what he wanted and how to pursue it. When I talked to him last night, I looked at him very carefully. I always had a kind of inexplicable stereotype before, thinking that he seemed to have become mature overnight. But when he took off his thin, framed glasses and his suit with his messy, just dried hair sticking up without hairspray, I was in a daze. It seemed as if I had returned to the moment when I first saw him at University X. He looked a bit uneasy. I silently looked at him for a while. Before I could say a word, he preempted me and said, "You said you wouldn't mention breaking up." Me, Humph? You actually still remember? His face blushed and he turned his head away and made a tut sound without looking at me. I didn't want to mention breaking up, I sighed seeing his appearance. Why didn't you tell me when my parents went to see you before? He still turned his head away and said nothing. Do you think it's useless to tell me, or do you think I don't deserve to know? I'm really getting bolder and bolder. His face turned deathly pale all of a sudden. He suddenly looked at me and said to me in a trembling voice, "You know best how to provoke me, don't you?" I silently sighed in my heart. I called his name and said, "Since we are partners, why don't you tell me anything?" He immediately said, "You don't necessarily tell me when you're sick either." In the past, I would definitely have thought that this was a sign that he was impatient and wanted to end the conversation. But at that moment, I had an epiphany and seemed to instantly see through his tough-looking but actually timid armor. "I didn't tell you because I was worried about affecting your work." I chose my words carefully and said slowly, "You were very busy with work during that period, and I didn't want to cause you any trouble." He seemed to be stunned for a moment, as if he didn't expect me to explain it to him so directly. He was like a stray cat with a very strong sense of vigilance that I had encountered on the road before. For the food thrown by passers-by, it was both wary and reluctant to give up. It just lowered its body and hesitated while observing. He lowered his head and secretly glanced at me several times. I just stayed still and let him look. After a while, he said in a small voice, "I work desperately in the hope that your parents will recognize me." Then he immediately added, "It was all because you suddenly asked me to go back with you to meet your parents that day. That's why I thought about getting the company listed as soon as possible during this period to see if I could." His face was so red that it seemed to be dripping blood. I've never been wrong. I'm really too stupid. When I saw him, it was like someone who wanted to get close to the sun would also see Icarus, who was closest to it. I saw his reliability, his calmness, his propriety in advancing and retreating, and his never flinching. But I never saw that there would be any moment when he was as hesitant and insecure as I was. I never thought that he would be as at a loss and clumsy with me as I would be with him. When I trapped myself in a small world and paced back and forth, self-pitying, I never thought that when it came to feelings, he wasn't much smarter than me. I thought that since you've met them, you should have some understanding of your parents' characters, I said helplessly. His expression seemed to freeze. At this moment, he was like a house cat that accidentally bumped its head against a glass door with a bang while playing. He said to me a bit aggrievedly, "I've met them. They didn't like me very much at that time. I was afraid that if you took me back and I met the people you grew up with, you would feel ashamed." He took a deep breath. "I'm afraid your parents won't recognize me." He seemed to muster up the courage to say to me. I shook my head. You're thinking a bit too optimistically. They haven't even acknowledged me, I said to him. How could they possibly acknowledge you? He looked at me blankly. I really want to tell him about my past like I used to tell stories to you all before. I want to be meticulous, not missing a single detail. It doesn't matter if I'm long-winded. I've never told him about this before. I'm worried that my past will bore him, and I'm also afraid that he'll dislike me because of it. He may not have the patience. I'll tell him later. I want to tell him about my parents, my childhood growing up with the babbling of opera sounds. I've hardly had any contact with those who he thought were my playmates. It's just the petty, bourgeois idealism of my parents' so-called circle in their attempt to solidify the social class. I want to tell him why I chose this major and how I felt when I first saw him. I want to tell him about the novel he picked up for me and how over the years we've carefully probed each other but never really found the right way. I'll tell him later, but not now. All I want to do now is hug him. I did exactly that. I also kissed him. Thank you all for your company all this time. This is probably the last post I'll make on this forum, because I no longer need to know how to make my boyfriend fall in love with me. I think he has always loved me. I suddenly found that the forum requires at least 500 words to reply. If you don't mind, I'll tell you one more trivial thing that happened between Lucas and me the other day. Recently, Lucas finally seems to have realized that working overtime and coming home late only reduces the time we spend together and serves no other purpose. So these days he has given up working overtime and come back early in the evenings. Since he's back, I naturally can't just stay in the study and read books by myself. But since Lucas and I haven't spent time together at this time of day for a long time, after dinner, we just sat at either end of the sofa, silent and looking at each other. I think you can probably imagine how awkward that scene was. I desperately tried to recall what ordinary lovers would do in this situation, but unfortunately, I don't have much experience in this regard. Fortunately, at that moment, I suddenly had an inspiration and remembered what my friend once told me. What else can you do when you're in a relationship? Isn't it just eating, kissing, watching movies, taking walks, talking nonsense, and having sex, just repeating it? Although his next sentence was, fortunately, I don't plan to be in a relationship, I think there's nothing really wrong with what he said. Lucas and I have already eaten. The only thing we can do now is probably watch a movie. I've never watched a movie with Lucas before. When I tentatively suggested watching a movie together, Lucas almost immediately got up to change his clothes. I quickly grabbed him and said helplessly, "Can we watch it at home?" Leo recommended a movie to me before and I haven't had the chance to watch it yet. Leo is that friend of mine. Lucas seemed to roll his eyes, but still sat down next to me. I quickly got up and went inside to get the projector. The movie my friend recommended to me is called 7 Pounds. I asked him what the name meant. He wasn't too sure either. He just said that some people say it's the weight of a heart, some say it's the weight of a person's soul, and some say it's from Shakespeare's The Merchant of Venice, where the creditor insists on cutting off a pound of flesh as repayment for the debt. I checked the general plot of the movie online before. The central idea is a story about a protagonist who has committed a sin trying to achieve self-redemption by saving others. I thought the movie that was recommended by my extremely picky friend would be amazing, but then he told me it was just average. So why on earth did you recommend this movie to me? You can watch it or not, it's really up to you. Sometimes I actually don't quite understand this friend of mine. His background is similar to mine. He is smarter than me and more adaptable. His parents are more open-minded than mine and he has more friends than me. I don't think he has ever experienced any setbacks in his life. He doesn't believe in religion, and to be blunt, he is not an easily moved person. The movie starts with a car accident caused by the male protagonist's negligence. This car accident directly killed 7 people, including the male protagonist's fiancée. Only the male protagonist survived. The surviving him was extremely painful and determined to atone for his sins. He stole the credentials of his younger brother who worked in the government and began to investigate the information of those honest but unfortunate people, planning to save them through organ transplantation. The whole movie unfolds around his atonement experience. During the whole movie, I didn't say a single word to Lucas. However, when the male protagonist got closer and closer to the girl with heart disease in the movie, I felt him hold my hand. The final scene on the screen ends with the girl who received the male protagonist's donated heart meeting the pianist who received the male protagonist's donated corneas. The movie ends with just such a glance. When the credits were rolling at the end of the movie, I said to Lucas that I suddenly remembered what my friend said when he recommended this movie to me. He said, in the end, he saw his heart with his eyes. Lucas just gave a soft hum. Then he seemed to suddenly remember something. I'm different. At first, I didn't quite understand. I just instinctively felt that there would be more to come, so I turned my head to look at him. He seemed a bit hesitant. What's wrong? I asked him. I'm much luckier than him. Lucas lowered his head and placed his other hand on my left hand that he hadn't let go of since the second half of the movie. He intertwined his fingers with mine as if this could bring him something. I didn't say a word. I seemed to have a premonition of something. He looked up at me. There's no need to die, Lucas said to me. I can also see my heart with my eyes.